Warning: this video contains details of real crime cases. Watch with caution. If you're a fan of true crime investigations and want to follow more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any case. In the quiet suburbs of Millbrook, New York, a picturesque community known for its tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors, the story of Evelyn Sinclair and Marcus Hawthorne unfolded like a modern fairy tale gone wrong. Evelyn, a vibrant 19-year-old with dreams as vast as the sky, found herself swept off her feet by Marcus, a charismatic 31-year-old helicopter pilot whose charm and confidence seemed to promise a life of adventure and security. Their story began when Evelyn was just 15, a high school sophomore whose head was easily turned by the attention of an older, seemingly sophisticated man. Marcus, with his steady job and worldly air, represented everything exciting and grown-up to the young Evelyn. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a hasty wedding in Portugal, a decision that raised eyebrows among family and friends but seemed, to the young couple, like the perfect start to their happily ever after. On the surface, Evelyn and Marcus appeared to have it all. A generous gift of $60,000 from Evelyn's parents allowed them to begin building their dream home, a place where they could raise their 11-month-old daughter, Lily. The couple settled into a rented two-story house on Oakwood Lane, a peaceful street where neighbors still left their doors unlocked and children played freely on front lawns. However, beneath the veneer of domestic bliss, a darker reality lurked. Evelyn's personal diaries, discovered later, painted a picture of a marriage fraught with emotional manipulation and control. Marcus, the dashing pilot who had once swept Evelyn off her feet, revealed himself to be possessive and domineering. Entries detailed Evelyn's growing desire to leave, her fears for the future, and her determination to provide a stable home for little Lily. "I can't take it anymore," one entry read. "But how can I leave? Where would we go? Lily deserves better than this, but she also deserves a family. I feel so trapped." Despite the turmoil, Evelyn maintained a brave face to the outside world. Neighbors would later recall her as a devoted mother, always seen playing with Lily in the front yard or taking her for walks in the nearby park. Marcus, too, kept up appearances, known in the community as a hard-working family man who seemed to dote on his young wife and daughter. As the months passed, the strain in the Hawthorne household grew. Evelyn confided in a close friend about her fears, but always with the caveat that she was probably overreacting. "Marcus just wants what's best for us," she would say, her voice betraying the doubt she felt. The idyllic facade of their life on Oakwood Lane was about to shatter, transforming their home from a symbol of the American dream into the scene of a nightmare that would shock the nation. The events that unfolded on that fateful night of May 11th, 2021, would reveal the true nature of what lay behind closed doors, forever changing the lives of those involved and leaving a community to question how well they really knew their neighbors. Little did anyone know that the charming house at the end of Oakwood Lane, with its white picket fence and blooming rose bushes, was about to become the focal point of one of the most chilling and deceptive crime scenes in recent memory. The tranquility of Oakwood Lane was shattered in the early hours of May 11th, 2021. At approximately 2:17 a.m., the stillness of the night was broken by the desperate wails of a child and the frantic voice of Marcus Hawthorne calling 911. "Please help us. They've killed my wife." Marcus's voice cracked with panic as he relayed the horrifying details to the emergency dispatcher. According to his account, 3 masked intruders had broken into their home, overpowered him, and brutally attacked his wife, Evelyn. When first responders arrived at 42 Oakwood Lane at 2:31 a.m., they were met with a scene of chaos and horror. The front door stood ajar, its frame splintered from an apparent forced entry. Inside, the once pristine living room was in disarray. Furniture overturned, drawers emptied, and personal belongings strewn across the floor. Officer Sarah Jennings, the first to enter the premises, described the scene in her official report. "Upon entering the master bedroom, I observed a female victim, later identified as Evelyn Hawthorne, lying motionless on the bed. The victim showed no signs of life, with visible bruising around her neck and face. Beside her, a young child, approximately 1 year old, was crying and attempting to rouse the victim. Marcus was found in the corner of the room, his hands and feet bound with duct tape, which he had partially managed to remove. He appeared distraught, with minor cuts and bruises consistent with his story of a violent struggle. As crime scene investigators combed through the house, they noted several key pieces of evidence. A board game box in the closet had been emptied, its contents scattered. Marcus later confirmed this was where they had hidden the $60,000 gifted by Evelyn's parents. The family dog, a golden retriever named Max, was found deceased in the backyard, apparently killed to prevent it from alerting neighbors. Detective James Morrison, lead investigator on the case, initiated a neighborhood canvass. "We're looking for anyone who might have seen or heard anything unusual in the hours leading up to the incident," he stated in a press briefing later that morning. "At this point, we're treating this as a home invasion gone tragically wrong, but we're exploring all possibilities." Neighbors, shocked by the events unfolding on their quiet street, provided conflicting accounts. Mrs. Eleanor Whitaker, residing 2 doors down, reported hearing what she thought was an argument around midnight but dismissed it as a TV show. Another neighbor, Tom Fredericks, mentioned seeing an unfamiliar dark sedan parked on the street around 1 a.m. but couldn't recall any specific details about the vehicle or its occupants. As dawn broke over Millbrook, the community grappled with the harsh reality that their safe haven had been violated. Local news vans lined Oakwood Lane, their presence a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded behind the Hawthorns' white picket fence. Marcus, having been treated for his injuries at the scene, was taken to the police station for further questioning. His initial statement painted a picture of a harrowing ordeal. "I woke up to find 3 men in our bedroom. They demanded money, threatened our baby. I tried to fight them off, but they overpowered me. They hurt Evelyn. I couldn't stop them. Oh God, I couldn't save her." As investigators dug deeper into the events of that night, they couldn't shake the feeling that something about the scene didn't quite add up. The brutal efficiency of the attack, the specific targeting of the hidden money, and the lack of substantial physical evidence left by the alleged intruders raised questions that would drive the investigation in unexpected directions. The idyllic life on Oakwood Lane had been irreversibly shattered, leaving a community in fear and a family torn apart. As the sun rose on a new day, no one could have predicted the twists and turns this case would take, nor the shocking truths it would eventually reveal. As the investigation into the Hawthorne case entered its second week, Detective James Morrison and his team found themselves navigating a labyrinth of conflicting evidence and testimony. The initial theory of a home invasion gone wrong was beginning to show cracks, and a more complex picture was emerging. One of the first breakthroughs came from the forensics team. Dr. Amelia Chun, the lead forensic analyst, reported an unusual finding. The distribution of blood spatter in the bedroom doesn't align with Mr. Hawthorne's account of the struggle. Additionally, we've found no traces of DNA or fingerprints from the alleged intruders, which is highly unusual in a crime of this nature. This revelation prompted a deeper dive into the physical evidence. The duct tape used to bind Marcus was found to match a roll discovered in the Hawthorns' garage. More puzzlingly, fibers from the carpet were found on the adhesive side of the tape, suggesting it had been prepared in the house, not brought in by outside assailants. Meanwhile, Detective Sarah Reeves had been meticulously piecing together a timeline of the events leading up to that fateful night. Her investigation uncovered some troubling inconsistencies. "We've spoken with several of Evelyn's friends," Reeves reported. "They paint a picture of a relationship that was far from perfect. There were mentions of arguments, of Evelyn feeling isolated and controlled. One friend, Jessica Talbot, provided a crucial piece of information. Evelyn called me the night before it happened," she stated, her voice trembling. "She said she was planning to leave Marcus. She sounded scared but determined. I should have done something." This testimony shifted the focus of the investigation. Detective Morrison ordered a deep dive into the couple's financial records, social media accounts, and phone records. What they uncovered was a web of deception that had been carefully woven over months. Marcus Hawthorne's pristine image began to crumble under scrutiny. His claims of a stable career as a helicopter pilot were exaggerated. He had been unemployed for months, accruing significant gambling debts. The $60,000 gift from Evelyn's parents, ostensibly for building their dream home, had been largely squandered on online poker sites and sports betting. As investigators pieced together the puzzle, a chilling motive began to take shape. If Evelyn had left with their daughter, Marcus stood to lose not only his family but also his access to the remaining funds and any future financial support from his in-laws. The breakthrough that would ultimately crack the case wide open came from an unexpected source. A neighbor's security camera, initially overlooked due to its distance from the Hawthorne residence, captured grainy footage of the street in the hours before the alleged break-in. The footage showed no sign of the suspicious vehicle Marcus had mentioned, nor any indication of intruders approaching the house. Detective Morrison, presenting these findings to his team, summed up the growing suspicions. We're no longer looking at a home invasion. The evidence points to an elaborately staged crime scene, designed to mislead us from the very beginning. Our prime suspect is no longer an unknown assailant, but Marcus Hawthorne himself. As the true nature of the crime began to emerge, the community of Millbrook reeled from the implications. The story of a loving family shattered by random violence was transforming into a tale of domestic deception and premeditated murder. The investigation was far from over, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. The truth behind the tragedy on Oakwood Lane was far more sinister than anyone had initially imagined. As detectives prepared to confront Marcus with this new evidence, they knew that the most challenging part of their investigation was yet to come. As the investigation into Evelyn Hawthorne's death entered its third week, a pivotal discovery would irrevocably alter its course. Detective James Morrison had called for a comprehensive review of all digital evidence, a decision that would prove to be the key to unlocking the case's most closely guarded secrets. Cybercrime Specialist Agent Zoe Chun was tasked with analyzing the couple's electronic devices. Her meticulous examination of Evelyn's smartwatch yielded a startling revelation. The biometric data from Mrs. Hawthorne's device indicates that her heart stopped beating at 11:42 p.m., Agent Chin reported, her voice steady but her eyes reflecting the gravity of the discovery. This is nearly 3 hours before the time Mr. Hawthorne claimed the intruders entered their home. This discrepancy was more than just a timeline inconsistency. It was a seismic shift in the entire narrative of the crime. Detective Morrison immediately ordered a re-examination of Marcus Hawthorne's movements on the night in question. Concurrently, forensic accountant Timothy Walsh had been tracing the labyrinthine path of the Hawthorne's finances. His findings painted a picture of desperation. In the months leading up to Evelyn's death, Marcus had taken out several high-interest loans, Walsh explained, pointing to a complex web of transactions on his screen. He was underwater, owing nearly $100,000 to various creditors. Interestingly, he had also recently increased Evelyn's life insurance policy to $500,000. The financial motive, combined with the smartwatch data, cast Marcus Hawthorne's actions in a sinister new light. But it was the next piece of evidence that would truly break the case wide open. In a stroke of investigative brilliance, Detective Sarah Reeves had thought to check Marcus's fitness tracking app. What she found was damning. According to his phone's GPS and step counter, Mr. Hawthorne was moving around the house freely during the time he claimed to be bound and restrained. Reeves announced to the team, her voice tight with the tension of their breakthrough. Armed with this new information, Morrison and Reeves prepared to confront Marcus Hawthorne. The interview room at the Millbrook Police Department was charged with unspoken accusations as Marcus was brought in for questioning. "Mr. Hawthorne," Morrison began, his tone measured but firm, "we've uncovered some inconsistencies in your previous statements that we'd like to discuss." As the detectives methodically laid out the evidence, the smartwatch data, the financial records, the fitness app information, they watched Marcus's composed facade begin to crumble. His eyes darted nervously, his hands fidgeted, and beads of sweat formed on his brow. I can explain," Marcus stammered, but his words rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming evidence. It was at this moment, under the weight of irrefutable facts and the skilled pressure of the detectives, that Marcus Hawthorne's carefully constructed life finally shattered. In a voice barely above a whisper, he uttered the words that would seal his fate. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never meant to hurt her." What followed was a confession that sent shockwaves through the investigation team and would soon rock the entire community of Millbrook. Marcus detailed a plan born of financial desperation and a crumbling marriage, a scheme to stage a home invasion that had spiraled tragically out of control. As Marcus Hawthorne was led away in handcuffs, Detective Morrison couldn't help but reflect on the twists and turns that had led to this moment. What had begun as an apparent random act of violence had been revealed as a calculated, though ultimately bungled, attempt at deception. The case of Evelyn Hawthorne's death was far from closed. There were still questions to be answered, loose ends to tie up. But one thing was certain. The truth, no matter how deeply buried, had finally come to light. In the wake of Marcus Hawthorne's confession, the quiet town of Millbrook found itself grappling with the aftermath of a tragedy that had shaken its very foundations. The case that had begun as a horrifying home invasion had unraveled into something far more insidious, a premeditated murder born of desperation and deceit. As the legal proceedings against Marcus Hawthorne commenced, prosecutors painted a damning picture of a man driven to the unthinkable by financial ruin and the prospect of losing his family. District Attorney Eleanor Graves stood before the court, her voice resonating with controlled fury as she addressed the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is not just a murder, but a betrayal of the deepest kind," Graves declared. Marcus Hawthorne didn't just take Evelyn's life. He attempted to desecrate her memory with a web of lies. The trial, which lasted 3 weeks, captivated the nation. Witnesses took the stand one by one, each testimony adding another layer to the tragic narrative. Jessica Talbot, Evelyn's friend, recounted through tears the phone call she had received on the eve of the murder. "She was so hopeful about starting a new life," Talbot said, her voice breaking. "She never got that chance." Forensic experts meticulously laid out the evidence that had unraveled Marcus's fabricated story. Dr. Amelia Chun walked the jury through the blood spatter analysis, her laser pointer dancing across crime scene photos as she explained how the physical evidence contradicted the tale of violent intruders. Perhaps the most poignant moment of the trial came when Evelyn's parents took the stand. Her father, Michael Sinclair, a man stooped by grief, faced Marcus directly. "We welcomed you into our family," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We trusted you with our daughter's life, with our granddaughter's future. How could you?" As the trial progressed, the community of Millbrook became a town divided. Some residents, who had known Marcus for years, struggled to reconcile the charming neighbor they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer revealed in court. Others, galvanized by the tragedy, organized vigils for Evelyn and rallied for increased awareness of domestic violence. On the final day of the trial, Marcus Hawthorne himself took the stand. Gone was the confident, charismatic man who had once charmed Evelyn Sinclair. In his place sat a shell of a person, eyes sunken, voice hollow as he addressed the court. "I loved her," he said, though his words rang empty in the hushed courtroom. "I never meant for it to end this way. The debts, the lies, they just kept piling up. I couldn't see a way out." The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. As the judge sentenced Marcus Hawthorne to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a collective exhale seemed to ripple through the courtroom. For many, it felt like the closing of a chapter, but for those closest to Evelyn, it was clear that the pain would linger far beyond the trial's conclusion. In the months that followed, Millbrook slowly began to heal. The house on Oakwood Lane, once a symbol of suburban tranquility turned crime scene, stood empty, a silent reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Evelyn's parents, now guardians to young Lily, spoke of plans to sell the property and start anew elsewhere, away from the painful memories. Detective James Morrison, speaking at a press conference after the trial, reflected on the case that had consumed his team for months. "This case reminds us that appearances can be deceiving," he said, his usually stoic demeanor tinged with emotion. "It's a tragic reminder of the importance of listening, of looking beneath the surface." Evelyn Hawthorne's voice was silenced, but in pursuing justice for her, we hope to give voice to others who might be suffering in silence. As Millbrook moved forward, the case of Evelyn Hawthorne served as a somber reminder of the secrets that can lurk behind closed doors, even in the most seemingly perfect of homes. It stood as a call to vigilance, a plea for compassion, and a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth in the face of elaborate deception. 5 years after the shocking events on Oakwood Lane, the case of Evelyn Hawthorne continued to resonate, its impact extending far beyond the borders of Millbrook. What had begun as a local tragedy had evolved into a catalyst for change, sparking conversations about domestic violence, financial deception, and the often hidden struggles within seemingly perfect relationships. On a crisp autumn morning, a small crowd gathered in Millbrook's Central Park for the unveiling of a memorial dedicated to Evelyn. The statue, a bronze figure of a young woman with outstretched arms, stood as a poignant reminder of a life cut short and a call to vigilance against domestic abuse. Sarah Reeves, now chief detective, addressed the assembled crowd. "Evelyn's story is not just a cautionary tale," she said, her voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "It's a call to action. In the years since her death, our department has implemented new training protocols to better recognize signs of domestic distress and financial coercion." Indeed, the Hawthorne case had led to tangible changes in law enforcement approaches across the state. The Evelyn Protocol, as it came to be known, mandated a more thorough investigation into the family dynamics and financial situations in cases of suspected domestic homicide. Evelyn's parents, Michael and Linda Sinclair, stood at the forefront of these changes. Through their grief, they had found purpose in advocating for increased awareness and support for victims of domestic abuse. Their foundation, Evelyn's Light, had become a beacon of hope for many, providing resources and safe havens for those seeking to escape abusive situations. "We couldn't save our daughter," Linda Sinclair said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes, "but through her memory, we hope to save others." The case had also sent ripples through the financial sector. Timothy Walsh, the forensic accountant whose work had been crucial in unraveling Marcus Hawthorne's deception, now lectured at universities on the intersection of financial crimes and domestic abuse. Financial control is often an overlooked aspect of abusive relationships, Walsh explained in a recent interview. The Hawthorne case illustrates how economic desperation can lead to devastating consequences. It's crucial that we educate people on recognizing these signs early. In the quiet neighborhood of Oakwood Lane, life had slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The Hawthorne house, which had stood empty for years, a stark reminder of the tragedy, had finally been sold. The new owners, a young couple with dreams of starting a family, spoke of renewal and second chances. Lily Hawthorne, now 6 years old and living with her grandparents, was growing into a vibrant young girl, her mother's spirit living on in her curious eyes and determined smile. The Sinclairs, while protective, ensured that Lily knew the truth about her parents, sharing stories of Evelyn's kindness and resilience. Marcus Hawthorne, serving his life sentence, had become a cautionary figure in the prison system. His case was often used in rehabilitation programs as an example of how a series of poor choices and deceptions can spiral into unthinkable acts. As the sun set on the memorial unveiling, casting long shadows across the park, Detective James Morrison, now retired, reflected on the case that had defined his career. "The Hawthorne case taught us that the most dangerous predators don't always look like monsters," he mused. "They can be our neighbors, our friends, even our loved ones." It taught us the importance of looking deeper, of asking the hard questions, and of never taking appearances at face value. The legacy of Evelyn Hawthorne, a young woman whose life was cut tragically short, continued to shape lives and policies. Her story, once a shocking headline, had become a powerful tool for education and change. In Millbrook and beyond, the echoes of Oakwood Lane served as a somber reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the vital importance of compassion, vigilance, and support in creating a safer society for all. As night fell on Millbrook, the lights around Evelyn's memorial flickered to life, a beacon in the darkness, a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of truth.